I originally envisioned the board that is the focus of this course as a two-layer design, and this was a deliberate choice. I wanted to achieve a compact form factor with cost constraints, and the specific routing demands of our USB thumb drive all pointed towards two layers, and actually wanted to challenge myself to achieve this. But as I explained in the previous lecture, by the time that I completed my first iteration or the first prototype of the two-layer design, I realized that it just wasn't working, and it wasn't worth any additional time. In this lecture, I will talk about PCB stackup and layer strategy on 4-layer boards. I'm going to talk about what each layer is doing, why the arrangement of those layers is not arbitrary, and what physical consequences follow from getting it wrong. Understanding 4-layer strategy also sharpens your understanding of 2-layer design. Many of the compromises that we may accept in a 2-layer project board, such as wider ground pores, careful return path routing, and tighter placement rules, exist precisely because we don't have the structural advantages that a 4-layer stacker provides automatically. So knowing what you're missing is just as useful as knowing what you have. In a later lecture, I'll cover the impedance mathematics in detail. A 4-layer board is not 4 separate boards glued together. It's a single laminated structure built in a specific sequence. At the center is the core, a fully cured, rigid sheet of FR4 fiberglass with copper foil bonded to both faces. These copper faces become the two inner layers, L2 and L3. They're chemically etched into circuit patterns before lamination. The outer copper layers, which are L1 and L4, are thin copper foils. They're bonded to the core using prepreg, which is short, as you know, for pre-impregnated fiberglass. Prepreg is a partially cured fiberglass sheet saturated with uncured epoxy resin. Under heat and pressure in a lamination press, the resin flows, fills the gaps, and bonds everything into one solid structure. That's the single lamination press cycle that produces the finished product. The core has a dielectric constant, which is a measure of how well the material concentrates an electric field, and that's approximately 4.3 for standard FR4. Keep in mind, though, that FR4 decay is not a fixed value. I've mentioned this before. Published ranges vary by source, 3.8 to 4.8. Prepreg varies slightly because the resin flow during lamination is not perfectly controlled. The final prepreg thickness also depends on lamination pressure. This matters for impedance control, which is why fabricators publish their actual stackup data rather than relying on nominal values. Standard total board thickness is 1.6 millimeters. Outer copper layers are typically 1 ounce, which is 35 micrometers. Inner layers are commonly 0.5 or 1 ounce. The stackup must be symmetric. The layer arrangement above the midplane must mirror the arrangement below it. An asymmetric stackup causes uneven thermal expansion during lamination and reflow, which can warp the board. The most widely used 4-layer configuration assigns the layers as follows: signal on L1, ground on L2, power on L3, and signal on L4. This arrangement is commonly called SGPS, or signal, ground, power, and signal again. The most important decision in this arrangement is placing the ground plane on L2, directly beneath the top signal layer. The dielectric between L1 and L2 is thin, which is typically around 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters. That close proximity means signals on L1 have a tightly coupled reference plane immediately below them. That matters enormously for signal integrity, and the next slide explains why. The power plane on L3 sits adjacent to the ground plane. These two planes, ground on L2 and power on L3, are separated by the core, which is typically around 1.2 millimeters thick in a standard 1.6 millimeter build. Their close proximity creates a distributed capacitance between the planes, which helps the power delivery network. However, at standard core thickness, this interplane capacitance is very small, around 16 picofarads per square centimeter at 0.25 millimeter spacing, and considerably less at 1.2 millimeters. Discrete decoupling capacitors remain essential. The bottom layer, F4, is also a signal layer. It is farther from the power plane than L1 is from the ground plane, but L4 signals still reference back through the ground plane via transitions. Both outer layers are fully available for signal routing and component placement. This single arrangement, thin dielectric between L1 and ground on L2, is the structural foundation that gives 4-layer boards most of the signal integrity advantages. Every signal trace carries current from source to load. That current must return to complete the circuit. At direct currents and low frequencies, the return current spreads broadly and follows the path of least resistance. As you know, above approximately 100 kHz to 1 MHz, the physics change. The return current concentrates tightly in the reference plane directly beneath the signal trace because that path has the lowest inductance, not the lowest resistance. Between approximately 100 kHz to 1 MHz, the transition is gradual, of course. The area enclosed by the forward current path and the return current path is the loop area. Loop area directly determines loop inductance, and loop inductance determines how much electromagnetic energy the circuit radiates. A smaller loop area means lower radiated EMI. With a solid ground plane on L2, directly adjacent to signal traces on L1, the return current sits less than 0.2 millimeters away from the forward current, so the loop area is minimal. Loop inductance in this configuration is typically 1 to 2 nanohenries. Without that reference plane, as on a 2-layer board with no solid ground core, the return current must find its own route through whatever copper is available. Loop inductance can reach 10 to 20 nanohenries, and this is a 10-fold increase, and it translates directly to increased EMI radiation and poorer signal integrity. Now, consider what happens when the ground plane has a gap or split. A slot in the plane forces the return current to detour around the gap. Even a 1 millimeter void in the reference plane beneath a clock signal can significantly increase EMI radiation at frequencies above 100 MHz. And this is one of the most common causes of failing eMMC or electromagnetic compatibility certification tests. The rule is absolute. As I mentioned before, never route a high-speed signal over a split or void in the reference plane. A correctly implemented SGPS Stackup provides 5 compounding advantages. First, radiated EMI. A continuous ground plane on L2 typically reduces radiated emission by approximately 15 decibels compared to a 2-layer board without a solid ground plane. That 15 decibel figure assumes correct stackup and no routing over plane splits. A poorly designed 4-layer board, one with signals crossing plane voids, for example, can perform worse than a well-designed 2-layer board. Second, controlled impedance. The thin, consistent dielectric between L1 and L2 makes the impedance calculation straightforward. A trace on L1 or L4 has a predictable characteristic impedance based on trace width and dielectric thickness. On a standard 1.6 millimeter 4-layer board, achieving 50 ohms single-ended on L1 requires approximately a 0.2 millimeter wide trace, assuming prepreg thickness of around 0.2 millimeters on a dielectric constant of 4.2 to 4.5. Fabricators typically hold impedance to within plus or minus 10% on controlled impedance builds. You should confirm the exact trace width with your fabricator's actual stackup data. Third, crosstalk. The 2 inner planes sit between the top and bottom signal layers, which significantly reduces coupling between L1 and L4 signals. Fourth, power distribution. The power plane on L3 delivers supply voltage to every IC on the board through short vias, without the need to route individual power traces across the board surface. Fifth, routing density. Both outer copper layers are fully available for signals and components, and this is a major practical advantage over a 2-layer board, where copper area is shared between signals, power, and ground. One common misconception is this: the interplane capacitance between L2 and L3 is often cited as a power integrity benefit. On a standard 1.6mm build, the plane separation is approximately 1.2 millimeters, and the resulting capacitance is too small to replace discrete decoupling capacitors. Interplane capacitance becomes meaningful only when plane separation is below 0.1 millimeters, which requires a special manufacturing process. On any standard 4-layer build, place your decoupling capacitors as you would on any other board. SGPS is the most common 4-layer arrangement, but it's not the only one. There are 3 alternatives that appear regularly in practice. The double ground configuration assigns both inner layers to ground. Signal, ground, ground, signal. This is the strongest choice for signal integrity. Both outer signal layers reference a ground plane directly beneath them. Return current paths are clean on both sides. The trade-off is that there is no dedicated power plane. Power must be distributed as routed traces or copper pores on the outer layers. This configuration is suited to high-speed digital designs, FPGAs, memory interfaces, and anything with many fast parallel buses. The shielded signal configuration places ground planes on the outer layers and signals on the inner layers. So we have ground, signal, signal, and ground. The outer ground planes act as shields, which can be useful for sensitive analog circuits or low-noise radio frequency designs. The problem here is that L2 and L3, the 2 signal layers, are directly adjacent with no plane between them. So crosstalk between those layers can be severe unless signals on L2 and L3 are routed orthogonically, which means horizontal on one layer and vertical on the other layer. The power on L2 configuration places the power plane adjacent to the top signal layer instead of the ground plane. So we have signal, power, ground, signal. The top signal layer is now closer to the power reference than the ground reference. Return currents must couple capacitively from the power plane to the ground plane before completing the circuit. This adds a small but real loop inductance compared to direct ground reference. For signals below a few hundred megahertz with good decoupling, it's acceptable. But for high-speed digital signals, the standard SGPS arrangement is preferred. When a design requires multiple power rails, the power plane can be split into sections for different voltages, such as 3.3 volt, 1.8 volt, 1.0 volts, and so on. Each section serves as a local power distribution area for the ICs connected to it. Anywhere a via for a different net passes through the plane, an antipad keeps the via electrically isolated from the plane copper. Finally, if a 4-layer SGPS Stackup cannot accommodate all the high-speed signals, power rails, and return path requirements of a complex design, the correct solution is to add layers. A 6-layer board gives you 2 signal layers, 2 ground planes, and 1 or 2 power planes, which offer enough separation and shielding to handle most high-speed digital designs without compromise. In this slide, I'm including 5 rules that govern how a 4-layer Stackup translates into a working board. Rule 1. Place the ground plane on the layer directly beneath your primary signal layer. For most designs, that means ground on L2. This minimizes the dielectric thickness between signal and reference, minimizes loop area, and provides the tightest return current coupling possible within the Stackup. Rule 2. Never route a high-speed signal over a split or void in the reference plane. Any gap in the ground plane forces the return current to detour. The resulting increase in loop area increases EMI radiation and can cause signal reflections. This applies to clocks, USB differential pairs, SPI buses, and any other signal with rise times below about 10 nanoseconds. The rule is not situational. There are no acceptable exceptions for high-speed signals. Rule 3. Add stitching vias at every signal layer transition. When a signal changes layers via a through-hole via, the return current must also transition between reference planes. If L2 and L3 are both ground planes, a via connecting those planes near the signal transition provides the return current path it needs. If L2 is ground and L3 is power, the return current couples through interplane capacitance or a nearby decoupling capacitor, which is less ideal. Place stitching vias immediately adjacent to each signal transition via. Rule 4. Coordinate the Stackup with your fabricator before routing begins. Fabricators have a fixed menu of available core and prepreg thicknesses. The actual dielectric constant of the specific materials determines the trace widths needed for controlled impedance. Don't use generic FR4 decay values, for example, of 4.3 in your impedance calculations. You should request the fabricator's actual Stackup document and their published values. IPC 2141A provides a calculation method, but the inputs must come from real materials data. And Rule 5. Keep the Stackup symmetric about the midplane. The copper weight and dielectric thickness above the center of the board must mirror the copper weight and dielectric thickness below it. An unbalanced Stackup creates differential thermal expansion during lamination and during PCB reflow, which causes the board to bow. A warped board causes assembly problems and may crack solder joints during the thermal cycling in the field. Okay, here's what this lecture has covered. A 4-layer board is built from a central core carrying the 2 inner layers bonded to outer copper foils through prepreg in a single lamination press cycle. The standard total thickness is 1.6 millimeters. Symmetry about the midplane is required to prevent warping. The standard SGPS Stackup, which is signal, ground, power, and signal, places the ground plane on L2 directly beneath the top signal layer, separated by a thin dielectric of 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters. And this is the single most consequential structural decision in a 4-layer design. Above around 10 MHz, return current concentrates directly beneath the signal trace on the nearest reference plane. A solid ground plane on L2 keeps the return current loop area minimal, reducing loop inductance to 1 to 2 nanohenries and cutting radiated EMI by approximately 15 decibels compared to a 2-layer board without an equivalent reference plane. Splits or voids in the reference plane beneath a high-speed trace force the return current to detour, which increases loop area and is a primary cause of eMMC failures. Alternatives to SGPS exist. For example, double ground for maximum high-speed performance, shielded signal layers for sensitive analog designs, and split power planes when multiple voltage rails are required. When 4-layer SGPS cannot meet all the design requirements, then the correct path is to add layers. The 5 rules are: reference signals to a ground plane, not on a power plane. Never route high-speed signals over plane splits. Add stitching vias at layer transitions. Confirm Stackup details with your fabricator before routing. And finally, keep the Stackup symmetric.